into the light of a dark night. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly into the light of a dark night. We're singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started in just a moment. Thank you so much for joining us. Waiting on to you're only waiting for some. Come on in, come on in. We're only waiting for this moment to arise. All right. Good evening, y'all, and welcome to Not One Step Back, a national town hall for families, educators, and community members who are standing up for our kids, our schools, our communities all across this country. I am Tamisha Jessup, an Atlanta Public Schools Spanish teacher and content creator. And let me tell you, I've seen firsthand what it looks like when budgets get cut and how that hits our kids and our families. Tonight, we are here to say it loud and clear. We are not taking one step back. We've got a powerful hour lined up for you tonight, full of leaders, educators, and parents who are here to keep it real and build solutions with us. Drop your questions in the chat anytime. We want to hear from you. And for our Spanish speaking folks, we are so glad to offer interpretation tonight. Just click the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and choose English or Spanish. This event is being recorded, so please make sure you can share it with your networks and your communities afterwards. We'll be together for about an hour, and every single moment matters. Tonight's event is proudly co-sponsored by an amazing coalition of organizations that are all about standing up for our babies, our families, and our educators. We want to give a big thank you to Education Protection War Room, Coalition to Protect and Improve Education, All for Ed, American Federation of Teachers, Center for Learner Equity, EdTrust, Leaders of Color, Educators for Excellence, Engage in H, Giffords, Families in Schools, Moms Rising, National Center for Learning Disabilities, National Charter Collaborative, National Parents Union, National Education Association, Partnership for the Future of Learning, Red, Wine, and Blue, Students Engaged in Advancing Texas, and Unido US. Y'all, this is what collaborative power looks like. And trust me, we are just getting started. So let's kick this off by talking about what's really going on, the cuts in our communities, and what we can do to fight back. Please use the Q&A function for any questions. So let's kick this off. I'm excited to pass this over to Ariel Smith, who's going to break down the policy changes and the threats to funding for our schools and communities. Ariel, take it away.
Thank you, Tamisha. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight to stay informed about what the changes to federal policy mean in your communities. We know that the choices being made right now in the halls of Congress and in the White House are showing up as cuts to budgets all across the country. Last week, after many negotiations that went on into the dark of night, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act through a process called reconciliation, which requires just 51 votes to move through the Senate. The Senate passed the bill with 50 Republicans voting for it and all 46 Democrats and the 2 independents voting against it. They were joined by Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, Senator Susan Collins of Maine, and Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky in voting no. The House passed the bill, and as I'm sure you all saw, President Trump signed the bill into law last Friday. The passage of this bill will mean cuts to programming in your communities. These are the largest cuts to Medicaid and SNAP in US history. It is noteworthy that polling conducted by the National Parents Union, 80% of parents opposed cuts to Medicaid, including 69% of Republicans and 85% of independents. 76% oppose cutting financial aid programs, and 74% oppose cutting the SNAP cuts to SNAP. Over the next 10 years, an estimated 17 million Americans will lose their healthcare coverage due to the changes in Medicare and the ACA. Let's be clear. Healthcare funding cuts will increase costs, decrease access, and shut down hospitals for everyone, not just those on Medicaid. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, faced a cut of $186 billion over 10 years, or about 20% of their overall budget. Additionally, states are going to have to pay more to administer the program. This has the potential to impact 45 million people on SNAP in the US, including 5 million children. Additionally, there were major cuts to financing and borrowing for college, including creating borrowing caps on federal student loans, making it almost impossible for a kid to get all the way through medical school on their own without exceeding the cap on borrowing. The new lifetime borrowing cap is $257,000. This effectively limits people who having access to higher education based on what's in their bank account. All of these cuts and cost sharing provisions will squeeze state budgets as governors scramble to backfill budget holes. For example, requiring North Carolina to pay just 15% of SNAP benefit administrative costs will be equivalent to the entire state budget on child development and early education. Unfortunately, the cuts that I just outlined will be coming soon to rural hospitals, community food programming, and assistance for going to college. But we also have other cuts at our door right now. School districts across the country woke up on July 1st thinking that they had a payment coming, a payment that was meant to pay for summer school and college and career counseling. As we gather here this evening, the administration is withholding almost $7 billion from schools across the country. In Kansas, they've been forced to close summer school programming for students. In Idaho, youth centers are reporting having to shut their doors by the end of the week. The Office of Budget and Management is currently withholding the following amounts from schools: $2.2 billion in teaching training funds, $1.4 billion that pay for before and after school programs, $1.3 billion for tutoring and learning support, $890 million for English language learning instruction, and $375 million from Title I Part C, which funds migrant education programs. The average school district will lose almost $250,000 in funding if this freeze continues. Many will lose several million, and a few will be shortchanged by tens of millions. The 100 school districts that face the biggest cuts on a per pupil basis have an average child poverty rate of 24.4%, much higher than the national average, which is 15.3%. This all in addition to the administration's announcement in May about their efforts to stop $1 billion in grants passed by Congress in the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, funding that goes to our communities to pay for things like counselors in schools to keep our kids safe from gun violence and other threats. The impact that withholding this money will have on kids will be profound. It is and it will be profound. This evening, we are lucky to be joined by Governor Jared Polis, governor of the Rocky Mountain State and chair of the National Governors Association, to help us better understand how these cuts are hurting families across the country and in Colorado. Governor, welcome.
Thank you. I think the host needs to turn on my video. It's not letting me do that, so hopefully the host can do that. Otherwise, you're welcome to listen to me. But there it is. Start my video. Hello, everybody. So I've really been tasked with talking about not the bill that just passed, but funds that are due to school districts that formulaically from previous years' legislation in Congress, several title funds that add up to billions of dollars nationally. In my home state of Colorado, it's about $80 million that is already built into school district budgets for the school year that starts in just a few weeks, with many teachers not knowing whether to report to duty that are funded by these streams. This is a very last minute opaque decision to withhold billions of dollars from our schools. It's, as I said, it's about $80 million from Colorado for schools, for tutoring, for after school activities, including the Boys and Girls Clubs. And these cuts are hitting every state across the country, red, blue, doesn't matter. Parents care about their kids, and school districts and schools and teachers, and more importantly, students and families are left in the lurch, not even knowing if this funding will be released. Every single school district in the country is impacted to some degree by this freeze, risking services like counseling, supporting students, teacher training, all investments that help students succeed. And remember, these are funds that schools already budgeted for because the funding was already committed, and schools now have to make impossible decisions here just in the 11th hour, days or weeks before people were scheduled to report to work. And of course, here in Colorado, we're very focused to make sure that every student can get a great education and closing the achievement gap. And the federal contribution through these title funding through the federal government, specifically Title 1C, Title 2A, Title 3A, Title 4A, and Title 4B, collectively to our state are about $80 million that has already been allocated by our schools to serve families that we don't even know if we're going to receive. Just yesterday, I convened a group of Colorado educators and superintendents to really learn more about what's going on. I heard the superintendent from Colorado's second largest school district stand to lose several $1 million alone from this. And that's money that would go to support families, English language learners, students that aren't achieving in math and science, after school activities. I heard from a Boys and Girls Club that's going to lose critical funding that gives students a safe and enriching place after school. And I would add, in Colorado, many of our school districts are 4-day weeks, so they rely on partners like Boys and Girls Clubs for that fifth day, often Friday. And we care about making sure that these continue their funding. These kind of cuts, of course, are across the board. They'd be bad enough, but they're worse than that because they actually target the students that need the most help, the most at-risk students who historically, that's really in many ways some of the purpose of the federal investment in the title dollars. It goes to help students who need the most help. My message yesterday to Colorado educators is the same to parents today. We, as in Colorado, and I know I'm joined by many governors, will fight aggressively to protect these dollars that are owed to students across our country here in Colorado. And by coming together and raising awareness with gatherings like this, it's very important to fight for our schools and our students, to remain steadfast in our commitment to build a bright future, and to make sure that commitments made are commitments kept by the federal government. Thank you for the time, and look forward to your partnership to help make sure that these funds are released.
Thank you so much, Governor Polis. We are so lucky to have your leadership during such an important time.
Thank you.
All right. Si necesita interpretar la sesión de esta noche al español, haga clic en el botón Interpretación en la parte inferior de tu pantalla. Okay? And now I'm so excited to welcome the Governor of Arizona, Governor Katie Hobbs. Welcome, Governor.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I also cannot turn on my video. Oh, here we go. Got it. Thank you. Hi. Well, thanks for having me. I'm sorry we're having to have this conversation, but I'm proud to be able to join this call with so many leaders in public education from around the country. Here in Arizona, we have been on the front lines fighting for public education because we know firsthand what happens when we gut funding for public schools to pay for unaccountable private school subsidies for the wealthiest. Arizona's ESA voucher program has no transparency, no guardrails, and has evolved into a $1 billion boondoggle, far exceeding the original projections of what the program would cost. And that money is funding luxury car driving lessons, ski trip passes, and baby grand pianos, among many other things. Um, just this week, we learned that there is $440 million from this program that is being hoarded in private accounts. That is funding that could be used to pay our teachers what they deserve. It could be used to deliver a quality education to the over 90% of Arizona students who attend our public schools. And instead, it's sitting around collecting dust in individual private accounts. Meanwhile, our public schools are consistently some of the worst funded in the country. We have a teacher shortage because of tragically low wages, and it's a struggle to even fund basic necessities like maintaining our school facilities. And so when I look at this bill, I refuse to call it beautiful because it is anything but. And the chaotic and reckless cuts from the Trump administration are sending a clear message from Washington, D.C. They want the reality that we're seeing in Arizona to become the reality across the nation. And with the president's signature on this bill, they have directed billions of dollars to private school subsidies. They end with one order from the president. They halted over $130 million from Arizona's public schools with no explanation and no warning. And Governor Polis just touched on the impacts of that. Our public schools have been planning on that money, and now they're scrambling to contain the fallout of this reckless decision. Before and after school programs, music and the arts, and funding for adult education are all being gutted with this provision. So these cuts are not a Democratic or Republican problem. They are a problem for every elected official in all 50 states who want to expand opportunity and give every kid a shot, every kid in their state a shot. And every single governor is facing the same tough reality that I am and having the same conversations that I'm having. When I talk to teachers and parents who send their kids to public schools, when I talk to my sisters who are both public school teachers, they are shocked about this decision and don't understand why the federal government is ripping away these important programs. And the answer is simple and infuriating. It's so that they can fund tax rate breaks for people who are already billionaires. Here in Arizona, we are fighting back. We have done a lot of work to make clear that our ESA entitlement program, at a minimum, needs the basic accountability and transparency that we should demand of any taxpayer-funded program. We're calling out these cruel cuts and making it clear that we'll go to court if we have to. We're standing strong and fighting to fund our public schools. While politicians in Washington gut public education, I worked to fund our public schools and delivered nearly $300 million to improve school facilities. While they try to nationalize an unaccountable private school subsidy, I'm fighting for guardrails and transparency. Um, I'll close by saying that I know things seem really tough right now, and like our elected officials in Washington aren't standing up for us. And I see Congresswoman Ansari from Arizona on the call, and I know she's not among those. She is definitely standing up for us. Here in Arizona and in states across the country, you have a governor who's fighting to protect our public education and give every student the opportunity they deserve. We really are the last line of defense. And I hope you'll join me in making your voices heard and showing the nation that we'll keep fighting for quality public schools, to pay our teachers, and ensure that all of our children have a chance to thrive. Thank you so much to the EdPower Coalition for having me, and to everyone here on this call who are allies of public education. Know that I will keep standing with you and fighting for our kids and our teachers in Arizona. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Governor Hobbs and Governor Polis. We really have to stay aware of how these cuts are hitting our states and our communities, and having governors who are stepping up and leading in this moment are so, so important. So now we are so excited to be joined by the newest member of the House Education and Workforce Committee, where we are excited to see her lead, Representative Yasmin Ansari. Welcome, Congresswoman.
Hi, thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be able to join you all this afternoon. I'm Congresswoman Yasamin Ansari. I represent Phoenix, Glendale, and Guadalupe in the U.S. House of Representatives. Thank you so much to the families, the educators, the advocates who put this virtual town hall together to help break down what Trump and Republicans' cruel reconciliation bill means for our kids and for our families and how this fight will continue. So exactly 1 week ago today, I voted no on the reconciliation bill. It is an awful bill that will be devastating to millions of people across the country, and we are already seeing the impacts. The bill slashes programs that serve the most vulnerable among us. It does not help the average American. It hurts the poorest and the working class and benefits the richest. And it also represents the most unprecedented transfer of wealth from the bottom uh, 40% of our country to the top 10% of our country. And I know this call is, of course, focused on education, but I wanted to run through some of the most harmful impacts just so everyone has full understanding of the bill and what's happening on the education front will come after. So this bill will kick approximately 17 million Americans off of their health care and make premiums, deductibles, and co-pays soar for millions more. It cuts $1 trillion from federal healthcare programs, including the largest Medicaid cut ever in US history, as well as a $500 billion cut to Medicare. It includes the largest cut to nutritional assistance ever. It cuts SNAP by 20% and also forces states to cover more of SNAP's costs, which could lead to dozens of states potentially cutting SNAP entirely. It also weakens our public schools and makes higher education more expensive because it creates a permanent, unlimited tax credit for private school vouchers that undermine our public schools while attacking protections for student borrowers. It's extremely cruel. It's very difficult, to be honest with you. This is my first term in Congress, and seeing the callousness by which colleagues on the other side of the aisle operate and are willing to support a budget, even though in private, many have indicated concern with many parts of it because of their loyalty to the president is very, very concerning. In the coming weeks and months, we'll be hosting town halls across Arizona in many of the districts of the representatives who supported this bill to discuss what's next and really make sure that people understand what's in the bill. Polling does show that still it's about 50-50 in terms of Americans who know what's in the bill and those who do not. But the more people who find out what is in this budget, the more unpopular it becomes. So I just want to really also emphasize to people the importance of talking to your family, your friends, your colleagues, and letting them know what was voted on just last week. In Congress, I'm currently serving on 3 committees. I'm on the Natural Resources Committee, Oversight, and most recently the Education and Workforce Committee, where I'm proud to continue the work of former late Congressman Grijalva. From school districts that are falling into disrepair to labor unions worried about the most basic worker protections that are being rolled back, the work of this committee is more important than ever. It's urgent, especially with the bill that just passed. Nationally, we have seen Trump slash funding for historic higher education institutions, threaten foreign students, and create uncertainty for kids here who are on legal visas trying to get a good education. At my very first committee hearing for education and the workforce, Secretary Linda McMahon was actually the witness. And I decided to focus my questioning of her on voucher programs. And I asked her whether she supports taxpayers subsidizing wealthy students' tuition at expensive private schools, because she talks very big game, as I'm sure you all know, about eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. But she is letting it run wild as long as it benefits the ultra wealthy while public school students suffer. In Arizona, Governor Hobbs, just mentioned our ESA voucher program and how devastating that has been. A recent report found that families in Arizona who receive ESA vouchers, families who are already mostly high income, are hoarding these vouchers and saving the money to send their kids to college. Arizona public schools are facing a huge funding shortage. I'm a proud product of Arizona public schools myself. And Republicans in our legislature are cutting pathways to higher education and here federally by slashing Pell Grants for students and for kids who truly need them. We need to continue to fight back against the efforts to dismantle the Department of Education and dismantle our public schools. And now Trump and his administration are freezing more than $118 million in grant funding for Arizona schools. This is congressionally approved funding that supports ESL programs, IEPs, and staff salaries. Without this funding, schools cannot be the places of nurturing support and personal growth that our kids deserve. That's why I joined my Education and Workforce Committee colleagues in sending a letter to the Trump administration demanding that they unfreeze these funds and make sure Arizona schools have the funding that they need. Again, with the recent passage of Trump's bill, I've been hearing from Arizonans, including building trade unions, physicians, and even Republican labor leaders who are so terrified about the rollback also to manufacturing and clean energy investments and the jobs that will be lost in the state as a result. So my goal on this committee is to continue to elevate the concerns of Arizona teachers, administrators, students, and workers and work towards real solutions at the federal level so that we can make sure that at the state level we have what we need. I will continue to do everything in my power to continue the fight against this administration's cuts to programs that help our kids and families. Please know that my office is always a resource to you as well. Our website is ansari.house.gov. An amazing team, both in DC on the policy side and in our district. And we've done a lot of work already with the Arizona Educators Association, with local school board leaders. Another issue facing our schools is the fear of ICE and raids. And so we're in constant communication with our educators locally. And if you are in Arizona, we'd love to work with you as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you again for having me, and thanks for everything that you do.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Ansari, for your leadership on this issue and so many others as we keep fighting to make sure that every child across this country has access to real opportunities. Now, I want to introduce y'all to a mom you definitely need to know, Megan Beerley. She is joining us all the way from New Jersey to share how these cuts are hitting her community. Megan, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I had planned some things to share, but I feel like the leadership that is already shared and Ariel has really given us an overview of a lot of that. And so I guess I'd like to just roll out what some of this looks like, kind of in the trenches or on the ground for families. And I do a lot of work with students and parents and educators across the country. So what I'm going to talk about isn't just New Jersey, but I'm happy to answer questions if people have them. So when we're looking at all of these cuts with education, Medicaid, SNAP, we also have had the oversight with the dismantling of the Department of Education and how that used to function and how we could lean in on the policies and guidance and oversight from them. So as we're dealing with all of these funding cuts and what it even looks like. We have threats to IDEA and the loss of civil rights protections and the increased burden on families, which just creates instability not only in their schools, but in their homes for our children. So it brought me, like a lot of the things people were sharing already tonight, brought me back to a call that I had a week ago. Last Thursday, I was on a call with some parents, and we were trying to wrap our minds around the impacts and how to continue to support our children, their teachers, and families in our communities. And I really emotionally, because I'm in it as a mom, I'm in it as an educator. I was a school psychologist for 15 years in public ed before I had to pivot my work to support families because I just saw a need there in my community that I needed to fill. So I really am in this with parents and teachers feeling this and trying to use my voice and my experience to pull us forward in how we move through this. And still having trouble finding the words on how to explain like what this even is and where the impacts are going to hit and we're going to feel the most. We can project a lot of things, but I felt like it feels like we're in a free fall. We are not yet sure that we've reached the bottom. The floor has been taken out from under us. And the system we used to lean into has been it's not functioning the way we are used to it functioning, and even the laws and protections we thought we had, they're no longer stable for us to lean into to support our families, and the system is no longer looking like it's going to be able to function the way it used to. So when we look at some of this and think about when they were talking about the funding cuts right now with the money that's being held, summer programs are definitely being affected. Teacher professional development that usually happens over the summer to prepare our teachers is being affected. And we have lots of schools that don't even know that that money's not coming yet. So, or they didn't have foresight to know that it wasn't coming, to plan and pivot. So, there's definitely going to be an impact in our schools. I do a lot of work focusing on special education. And what I think my lens can offer because of my educational experience as well is when we talk about special education and the cuts to Medicaid that are going to affect speech therapy, OT, PT, mental health services that we usually could provide in school. When children with special needs don't have their needs met, it's taxing on our teachers. So somebody already brought up that we have the teacher shortage and they mentioned Arizona, but I think we're all feeling that. If our teachers aren't supported, they're not compensated, they don't have the tools, they don't have the time, they don't have the resources or the training, how are we expecting them to do a job? I don't think we do that in any other field. We wouldn't do that for doctors and say, you know what, we're not going to teach you how to do heart surgery, but go in and give it a try, and do it real fast because we don't have a lot of time in the day because we got to squeeze it all in. So this free fall idea of like, we don't even know what to grasp onto or where to get our footing right now is really where I feel like the parent community is. I'm getting calls every day from parents like, I just heard this, or my so-and-so just got this from Medicaid, or so-and-so is getting dropped from their insurance, or it just is, we don't know where to grasp. And so I guess that's one of my questions for leadership and what we're looking for. And I don't expect it to be answered tonight, but we really, as parents and educators, oftentimes we have to remember our educators don't always have the voice to say the things that parents can. So a lot of our parent communities are willing to be that voice. We don't have our livelihoods necessarily to lose by raising our voices. We really need to know, it's great to hear, I guess. We need to know what the next steps are and what we can lean in on. And we're looking to our leadership to help guide that. And we're hopeful, like, I'm so grateful to hear the congressman, woman, and governors that joined us tonight, because it just is reassuring to know that there's voices at the table that really are committed to speaking for our children and their teachers and our families. I think, I don't know, I moved on from several of my notes because a lot of things I was going to bring up were covered, but I mean, parents are struggling, and not knowing where we can lean into is the hard part. But having discussions like this and hearing from our leadership that kind of, they're definitely on top of it and things aren't just going to fall apart around us, is, I'm really grateful for the people on this call and this opportunity. And if there's anything else I can answer, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you so much, Megan. I don't know about y'all, but you had me over here clapping and shouting when you were talking about stretching the expectations of teachers who are already poorly compensated. Thank you so much. We appreciate your leadership and your honesty and the courage it takes to stand up and tell your story. All right, you all. So now we are going to hear from one of my fellow educators. And y'all know I love hearing from the teachers. So joining us all the way from Little Rock, Arkansas, please help me welcome Little Rock NEA President Christy Mosby. Christy, welcome to the space.
Thank you so much. As an educator, it is really disheartening to hear about the Trump's big, beautiful bill. In Arkansas, we've already been dealing with fighting against vouchers. Our governor just enacted a voucher law. And so this 25-26 will be the very first year that open enrollment into that voucher system is available to our public schools. So we are already struggling with deficits in public education. My superintendent alone is trying to find ways, is having to cut $15 million from his budget for the Little Rock School District. And so we're already strapped for funds. So to see that on July 1st, the funding that should have been given to us was not made available has really been devastating to our district. Immediately he sent out a letter stating that, traveled for professional development trainings out of the state or, are going to be canceled. So we won't have professional development. He has also, said that our 21st century grants, which support enrichment classes during the summer and also throughout the school year, may be affected by this lack of money. Summer school programs may also be cut, and also staff positions may also be affected by not receiving this funding. So for us, it's like adding injury to hurt already. We have really been devastated by our state's voucher system. And then to hear that President Trump's bill is going to add federal funding for vouchers, and he's also held up or put in review the funding that we should have received on July 1st, is really going to be devastating for public education, not just for educators, but for our students. Our students need those enrichment programs and those support programs in order to close the gap. So this is really difficult for us. We are all trying to figure out, some people have even said, do I still have a job? Because they're so worried by this funding. So it has really been devastating. A lot of the people on this call have already said what I wanted to say, is that we are trying to find ways to cut. It's going to be harmful for our students in the form of enrichment programs. It's going to be harmful in support programs. It's going to be harmful to educators who have devoted their life's work to supporting students. And so they are constantly trying to build their craft through professional development training. If that's cut, how are they supposed to get that training? You want us to have great public schools, but you refuse to train the people that are doing the hard work, the people that are in the trenches. So, I want to thank you guys for, your support. In Arkansas, we have a great grassroots community program that's also supporting us by introducing ballot measures and really fighting hard for public education. We want to thank you guys for what you're doing to support our students.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. The devastation you all are bracing yourself for in Little Rock is felt all over this country. Thank you for sharing the work you are doing in those trenches, girl. I'm right there with you. And we are going to fight here, and it is not over. We're not taking one step back. So, we heard from the parents and the teachers, and we cannot forget the most important voice in this work, the students. So please help me show some love and welcome Felix Rice joining us tonight from Texas. Felix, we are so glad to have you here. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me with all these super impressive people. My name's Felix Rice. I'm a rising senior at Georgetown University. I'm originally from the great state of Texas, so I'm a very proud product of our public schools there. And I can speak just from a personal perspective about some of the cuts in the bill. I know it has a name. It's a dumb name. I'm not going to say it. But how they specifically hurt college students like me. I can just unequivocally say that a big part of why I will graduate from Georgetown next year is because of federal grants and federal programs. I'm here today because of those investments in students like me, investments that are, unfortunately, as we all know, under greater threat now than they ever have been before. Those programs are critical at every single step of your educational experience. For me, you can trace the impacts back to when I was 15 years old, attending an early college high school at a state university in Texas. That opportunity was available to me because, in part, I received a federal Pell Grant. And that didn't just help me, pay for the tuition. It also qualified me for other things like a fee waiver to take the SAT and waivers for college applications, which saved me thousands of dollars that I didn't have. And so because I had that money, I didn't have to take out a loan just to apply to college. And instead, I applied to every single school that I dreamed, including Georgetown, where I am today. And after I made it here, federal programs continue to support me. I've continued to qualify for federal Pell Grants, federal loans, um, and beyond just like the educational funding that we're all kind of used to thinking about when it comes to college students. During my first summer in DC, when my university covered meal plan was no longer active, I received SNAP benefits, and that's how I ate during the summer. I also qualified for Medicaid, which means I didn't have to worry about paying for my prescriptions. I don't have to worry about if I can afford to go to the doctor when I get sick. I make an appointment, I go, they help me out, I go back to class. There are a lot of things that make education possible that we don't think about as education funding, but they're very important. And they're part of the reason that people are able to go to school and be successful. And now, as I think about what I want to do after I graduate, I might go to law school, maybe go to grad school. They're making even those opportunities more difficult. I know that the bill limits the amount of federal loans that you can take out for a grad degree, pushes students towards private loans with higher interest rates, fewer borrower protections. That's obviously not something that's helpful, especially for low income students. And beyond just like the funding cuts that we're seeing, students won't just be cut off, but it will also just make it more difficult to stay in these programs and to like continue to requalify when you're already in it. I can speak from experience when I say that navigating the bureaucracies of Medicaid, SNAP, they're already very confusing. They're very difficult to figure out, especially as a young person. So inevitably, the more hoops that you have to jump through to participate in these programs, the more people are going to lose access, even ones that should qualify, even with the cuts. I think everybody here knows that's part of their goal. Republicans in Congress and the White House, they can claim that they're trying to lower the deficit or cut back on spending or whatever. I think that I don't really need to explain to anybody here that that's just them trying to, help out their wealthy buddies on the backs of people who have the least. And the bill will raise the deficit by over $3 trillion. I'm not a math major. I knew that from a very young age that was not going to be for me. But even without that expertise, that seems like a pretty big increase to me. We all know that bill passed, but that doesn't mean that there aren't things we can still do. As I said before, these attacks on education are happening at all levels, pre-kindergarten to college. And unfortunately, educational inequality doesn't start when you apply to college or get here. It starts when you're born. And I know that people have touched on the way that the administration, the OMB, is withholding this funding for Title 1, 2, and 3 programs that should have already been appropriated by Congress. It should be on its way to states. So one thing we can do is take our energy and our fight to that and to talk to our representatives and governors and ask them to put pressure on Trump and the administration to release the funding. So thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you, Felix, for sharing your perspective with us so much. You killed that, Felix. I can't even lie to you. As a teacher, you making me proud and I didn't even teach you. But thank you so much, Felix. Our next speaker has experienced a loss that no parent should ever have to face. The unimaginable pain of losing a child to this country's gun violence epidemic. Please help me lift up and welcome Kim Mata Rubio. Kim, we are holding you in love tonight. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Rubio, and I lost my daughter, Lexi Rubio, on May 24th, 2022, when a gunman walked into Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas, and shattered our lives. In the 3 years since her death and the death of 18 other students and 2 teachers, I have spent every day grieving, surviving, and fighting to make sure no one else has to experience the pain I carry. I've learned a lot in the aftermath of this unimaginable tragedy. I've learned that trauma doesn't end when the cameras leave. It lingers in the classrooms, in the community, and most of all, in our children. That's why school-based mental health support has been so crucial for the survivors. That's why it's so important for all of our kids, our teachers, and our families. So when I heard that Donald Trump pledged to cut $1 billion in federal grants for mental health programs, funding that was passed with bipartisan support in the wake of the shooting that took my daughter from me, I felt sick. This isn't just a betrayal of the promises made to the families like mine. It's a dangerous step backward that will leave even more children without the care they need to heal. Democrats and Republicans came together to pass the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Our leaders found common ground to ensure schools had the funding they needed to properly address the mental health of our students. This $1 billion wasn't just a number, it was counselors in schools, trauma specialists for kids who witnessed the unthinkable, early intervention for students who are struggling, and hope for families like mine. This isn't just an irresponsible move, it's cruel. It's a message to every parent grieving a loss, every student still having nightmares, and every teacher who prepares to put their life on the line for their students, that their pain doesn't matter. Congress made a commitment after the massacre in Uvalde. Now it's up to every elected official on both sides of the aisle to keep their promises and ensure the Trump administration follows through on this funding. It is truly a matter of life or death. And it's up to every voter to remember who stood with grieving parents and who walked away. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, for being so open and brave. Our entire community wraps you up in love and gratitude for sharing your story with us tonight. Now, to close out our speakers, we have someone who is leading at the system level and making big moves for our schools. Please help me welcome Dr. Brenda Poole, Superintendent of Brinkley Public Schools in Arkansas. Dr. Poole, we are so excited to have you. Welcome.
Good evening and welcome, and thank you all for having me on. Wow, I don't know if I can come behind Kim and Felix because they are the reason why I do this work, and I kind of lead with my heart. And so their stories were so touching, and that's why we do what we do. When listening to Felix, I feel the gravity of the decision that is being made because he is a student like many of our students who will return our investment. So I look at these programs that are being cut as an investment into our future. And no doubt there's so many students across the country who would return that investment 100% when they finish their educational journeys. And it makes me sad to even think about how schools are going to struggle to have to reallocate other funding or find other ways or make decisions between helping students and keeping staffs and a possibility of putting some people in the employment line. But I think we need to get some clarity around what these programs actually do for the schools. And like Title I is for academic support and closing that achievement gap for students who are experiencing poverty. I serve a population of students who 78% of my students are in poverty, but 100% of them are capable. Those students didn't ask to be in poverty. They found themselves there. And I think we have a responsibility to use whatever resources we have to ensure that they have the best teachers in front of them, to have the best supports and wraparound services. And that is what funds like Title I does for them. We can provide tutoring. We can provide intervention. We can provide materials and resources, all sorts of things, that technology that they may not be able to afford at home. We can get devices. Like my school is a one-to-one school. So just thinking that some of those funds may be cut. Now in Arkansas, we have been guaranteed that funding for Title I for the upcoming school year. But after that, we don't know. So it's that uncertainty that keeps us kind of off balance and not able to really project the way we want to be able to look down the road and say, this is what's next, and this is how we plan for these students and these families. Because with Title I, we have parental engagement activities that we do. We support our homeless students with this money. We support our gifted students with this money. And so we even support paraprofessionals, having those aides in those classrooms, supporting those teachers, because the teachers, let's just be honest, the work that they're being asked to do now is really heavy lifting. And so whenever we can hire some additional staff to be able to support them, we try to do that and get those support staff highly trained and certified too. Most of my paraprofessionals, they go to the exact same trainings as my teachers. And so that's something I think that's very important. Title II funding, provides us with funding for instructional quality. That means things like teacher and leader development and being able to provide professional development and coaching for them. Like I said, we want to make sure that we have the best and the brightest in front of our students. And this money allows us to be able to do that. And when you start talking about that Title II funding, I have some of my paraprofessionals that we're putting back in school. We have a partnership with the REACH program, and we pay that tuition because they don't make enough money to be able to do that. So that's a way of me showing appreciation. I'm in a unique role that a lot of superintendents are not in. I am also the federal coordinator in my district. So I'm able to say, hey, I'm the superintendent. I see this need. No one has to come sell me this need because I'm there in that position as federal coordinator and superintendent. So I can see the need for me to grow my own teachers. And Title II funds helps us to be able to do that. So I pay for their tuition to do that. I pay for teachers who are willing to become multi-classroom leaders, step up in that role, or who are wanting to become mentors. We use that money in that way. If we need to hire substitute teachers so that teachers can learn their curriculum and get some training. Sometimes it's not possible to take up the teacher's summer because they're already doing other stuff during the summer for school to say, hey, you need to get this curriculum training. So we have to do it through the school year, and we have to pay for substitute teachers. So Title II funding affords us the opportunity to be able to do that as well. For evaluation and support systems, we can do that out of Title II funding. So the idea that this money, in which we have been told in Arkansas that we will lose that Title II funding and that Title IV funding for the upcoming school year. Title IV, enrichment and safety. This is talking about for the whole child. We talked about the Miss Kim, the parent that just spoke about the counselors and the SEL support, tech, social studies, civics, arts, all of these additional programs where we want to develop well-rounded students comes from Title IV funding. If we want to have assessment systems that teachers can use and don't have to spend a lot of time, we use that money as well for that. Don't have to spend a lot of time digging for questions and assessment banks. We use that money for that as well, those Title IV funding. And when you get to talking about Title I-C and our migrant students, those students are most likely coming from communities coming into our communities, and they're traveling from place to place, and they're doing that. Like I said, and they come in and they are sometimes our Hispanic families. That's mostly what I see in my community. And so you're talking about families who are moving from place to place. I don't know how much they're getting paid, but I know there's a need for services. They need help to get Social Security cards, or they may need help with some food or some school supplies, doctor's appointments, and things like that. And we are able to use those migrant funds, which I'm part of a consortium that kind of handles that using my allocated dollars for Title IV. So to invite them to the country to work, but not want to support them when they're here, that's not fair, because we know the rising costs of things. Even for myself, going to the grocery store has gone up, but people's pay is not going up. So like I say, it breaks my heart to hear stories like Kim's and Felix, and to know that as leaders, people who could help these families and these students, it is going to be a return on our investment. It won't be a negative return. So I don't see how we can allow ourselves or to sit back quietly while families and children are being hurt. And I always say that everyone has a line, and this is a line for me. And I feel like this is one where I will be vocal. And I can say that we weren't as surprised in Arkansas about these cuts coming up. We've been kind of watching it since January, and our commissioner has done a good job. Secretary Olivia has done a good job in trying to keep us informed and keep us aware of what is coming down the road. And maybe he may sit on a different side of the aisle than I do, but I can give him credit for always trying to keep us in the loop and keep us informed, so we're not caught off guard. So it gives us the opportunity and the space to start looking in our budget, because I believe in these things. I believe in supporting students and teachers. And so I feel like that I will start looking, and I have started looking in my budget to make sure that I can find these fundings to keep these programs going for my students, and decide what can I cut that's not harmful to them and the family. So thank you again for inviting me. Caitlin, thank you. I'm in the right space. I guess I was in the right space today because I'm just enjoying this conversation, and maybe this is something we can do back home in Arkansas.
Thank you so much, Dr. Poole. You are definitely in the right space. Thank you so much for your advocacy for our migrant families. And as a classroom teacher in Title I school for over a decade, I appreciate your passion and resourcefulness in this work. I may have to send you my resume. I was loving how you was talking about those teachers. Thank you so much. A huge thank you to all of our speakers tonight for your leadership, your bravery, and your willingness to ask the hard questions when our kids aren't getting what they need and what they deserve. So before we close out tonight, I want to leave you out with this. I know this moment feels heavy, right? We took on a lot. Let's take a minute, just breathe it out, right? Because this is heavy. But this is also a moment full of power. Because every single time families and communities come together, we make change, period. So here's what you can do right now. I know you got a lot of information. Hopefully you got some things clarified for you tonight. But what can you do? I know that y'all thinking that. I'm thinking, what can we do? What can we do? Right now, first, call your governor, your state reps, and your local school board. We need them fired up, mad, throwing a whole political tantrum about holding back funds that were already promised to our kids. Tell them you expect them to push back on this funding freeze and demand that they call the Department of Education and the Office of Budget and Management to release these funds ASAP. We cannot afford to lose this money, especially with all these massive cuts that are already signed into law. So you're going to use this QR code that you see on the slide right now, and it's going to take you straight to a tool where you can message your governor right now. Don't put it off. We don't have time to put it off, y'all. In Georgia, school's starting at the end of this month, right? Second, share your story. If your child lost a program, if your school is cutting staff, if resources are disappearing, talk about it. Post it. Tag us. We need to let people know what is really going on. No matter if you got 3 followers or 3,000 followers, 30,000 followers, talk to somebody about what is happening in your actual life and how you are seeing these cuts affecting your kids and your family. Third, stay connected. Head to protectpubliceducation.org. I'm going to say it again. Protectpubliceducation.org and get involved. We'll keep you updated on actions that you can take and ways that you can stay plugged in. Also, you'll get an email right after this with resources and tonight's recording so that you can share it with your platform and your people and let other people know who weren't able to make it tonight. Listen, we are not helpless. We are not invisible. We are all gas, no brakes, and we are not taking one single step back. Thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you for standing up, and thank you for being a part of this movement. Have a great night. Que tengas una buena noche.